Hey Leisure Gamers! Recently my friend Alan and I went to Toronto to visit a friend. Alan's the guy who helps me with the reviews over at Leisure Gamer. So while we were in Toronto, we did some cooking at my friend's house. And one night we made grilled shrimp and tofu, and served it over stir-fried vegetables and soba noodles. The dish was pretty good, and I'd definitely do it again, but it did have some pros and cons. So I'm going to go over what we did, and how I'd improve it if I was going to do it again. Oh, and a big thanks to both Matt and Alan for helping me film and cook. The morning before cooking, we went to a farmer's market and bought a bunch of vegetables. Unfortunately, I did forget to take my camera, or I'd show you some of the market. I promise not to forget next time. Back at home, we thawed some frozen shrimp and tofu, and after thawing, we pressed the tofu to squeeze out some of the moisture, which is what I've heard you should do prior to grilling, but as you find out, this is one of our first mistakes. After pressing, I sliced the tofu into smaller pieces that I thought would grill up nicely. Then I whipped up a marinade. I poured in some soy sauce, rice vinegar, sesame oil, black pepper, and red pepper flakes to add some heat. If I was back in the GamerKitchen studio, I'd probably use the bird chilies you always hear me talk about. Then I added sugar, which served two purposes. First, it would balance the salt and heat level, and second, I was hoping that it would make some sort of caramelized coating on the tofu when grilled. Then I chopped up some garlic and ginger and added that to the marinade. This is a different angle than normally shown in most episodes. Notice the knife tip stays down and the blade moves back and forth like a lever. Which reminds me, I should probably do a knife skill trainer episode. You guys need to remind me. Overall, the marinade was savory, tangy from the vinegar, and the aromatics added a sense of brightness. Then I combined the tofu with the marinade in a plastic bag, which is where I made my second mistake. I should have only cut one block of tofu for that amount of marinade, especially since the tofu soaks up a lot of liquid by the end. Lesson learned. After setting the tofu in the fridge, I worked on the marinade for the shrimp. I started again with the soy sauce, but then I added lime juice instead of vinegar. I also added a lot of lime juice, which was intentional. Then more red pepper, because heat is always good, and then black pepper. More ginger, more garlic, and finished with olive oil rather than sesame oil. Then, just like the tofu, I combined the shrimp with the marinade in a plastic bag. While the proteins were marinated, we prepped the vegetables. I julienned the green and red peppers while Matt peeled the string that runs down the spine of the snow peas. Then I tried to cut the mushrooms into matchstick pieces to match the peppers, and I did the same for the carrots. Lastly, I cut the green onions into about 1-inch pieces. Then we cooked the soba noodles, drained and rinsed them thoroughly. By rinsing under cold water, you stop the noodles from cooking further, and you remove extra starch, which helps but doesn't completely prevent sticking. Then I tossed them in just a bit of sesame oil and let them sit until later. Matt prepped the grill, preheating it on high, while I skewered the shrimp. We reduced the heat to about a medium-high and then laid out the tofu and shrimp. Just like in episode 11, where we go over the active skill of grilling, I let the proteins sit on one side to develop a good color. After a few minutes, I flipped the proteins and let them sit again. Even the tofu was able to get some color on it, but because I had too much tofu to marinade ratio, the grill was doing more harm than good. It was actually drying out the tofu even more. On the other hand, the shrimp cooked beautifully. Back inside, I let a wok get really hot over medium-high heat. Then I poured in some oil. I added the vegetables in stages of how long I thought they would need to cook, but then once done, I added salt, black pepper, a bit of soy sauce, and sesame oil, and tossed them to coat before serving. Looking back, I probably should have added more liquid to make more of a sauce, but for the final dish, I started with the soba noodles, then added the stir-fried vegetables, and topped with the shrimp and tofu. In the end, the highlights were the nicely marinated and perfectly cooked shrimp. The vegetables were also cooked very well, with just a bit of crunch left in them. The areas to improve were the under-marinated tofu, and the noodles that seemed like they weren't fully incorporated into the dish, and also the lack of extra sauce. Alan suggested adding the noodles to the stir-fry right before serving to cover them in the sauce, which is a great idea. Also, next time I'd probably garnish with toasted sesame seeds, but my biggest concern is to nail the grilled tofu, so expect to see a future episode on it. Also, let me know what you'd add or change to the dish, or if you have any tofu tips, I'm all ears. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you guys later.